progrès, opportunité, humanité, maîtrise, transparence. Il y a un enjeu en termes de transparence des algorithmes, il y a un enjeu en termes d'éducation, de compréhension par tous les citoyens de comment fonctionnent ces algorithmes. Il faut qu'on puisse maîtriser ces algorithmes, il faut qu'on puisse les expliquer. On sait bien que la politique de l'intelligence artificielle est la politique des données. C'est-à-dire que pour entraîner un algorithme, on a besoin d'accéder à des données. Donc, le futur de cette question passera par qui a accès à quelles données, quand, dans quelles conditions, dans quel contexte. La question de qui aura accès à quelles données va marquer le fait de est-ce que cette IA est démocratique ou pas. Donc, le rôle des acteurs publics est justement d'organiser ce débat de société, d'organiser ce débat démocratique. L'UNESCO peut être l'espace où différents pays partagent des expériences, partagent des outils, partagent des réflexions sur comment on peut avancer vers une intelligence artificielle plus éthique, plus transparente, au service de l'humain.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to start with the words of somebody else other than myself, because it is representative of the approach that we have at UNESCO and that Nicolas Miahe underlined right before I started to talk, which is that we hope to be a bridge that brings together different people from around the world, from different sectors, to talk about AI. There are lots of words in this video, memory, brain, neurons. In another video series, which I invite you to consult online, there are words like women, Africa, data, learning. There are positive words like innovation, be the best with purpose. There are negative words like bias, attacks on privacy, and rights. And this, for me, underlines two big questions. One is, what are we talking about, in fact, when we talk about artificial intelligence? And Cecilia, I loved in the beginning when you showed the Wikipedia extract on collective intelligence, because oftentimes I go to conferences about artificial intelligence, and you can see everybody there on their smartphones Googling, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence? It's nothing to be ashamed of. UNESCO, the European Union, the OECD, the IEEE, among many others, we are also struggling to define the parameters of what we are talking about concretely when we talk about artificial intelligence. It also underlines a second aspect that we at UNESCO hope to address, which is that there's a lot of underlying fear as it concerns artificial intelligence, which is a natural human response, because what we don't understand, we fear. And so we are working at UNESCO to construct a smart governance that embraces the uncertainty, which is part of the evolving AI ecosystem and AI governance ecosystem concretely. So my name is Sasha Rubel, and I coordinate and direct the work on artificial intelligence at UNESCO, and I'm very pleased to be here today with many colleagues and friends and chief enthusiasm and chief ethical officers, and particularly happy to follow my dear friend and colleague Nicolas Miahe and Nancy, who are championing two things that we at UNESCO believe very strongly in. One is the need to raise the voices of women in AI, which is absolutely crucial. And in my talk, you will see, I will show a couple videos, and they are all women, and not all of them are European, but also the need to ensure a multi-stakeholder debate as it concerns the future of artificial intelligence. Many of you probably know UNESCO. Many of you probably confuse UNESCO with UNICEF. If you know UNESCO, you know mostly our work on cultural heritage. But we, in fact, work across 5 sectors: education, the natural sciences, social and human sciences, communication and information, and culture. And AI is completely transforming the way we work in all 5 of these sectors. My talk, entitled Can Collective Intelligence Fix Democracies, I would nuance a little bit more to say, can collective intelligence practices be used as a tool of deliberative democracy to create the future of AI? I called the specific talk Intersections of Innovation, Co-Designing the Future of Digital Governance, because we at UNESCO strongly believe that the triptych of collective intelligence, deliberative democracy, and artificial intelligence is the way the future of digital governance is co-created. And I love this morning when Bertrand Serp introduced and welcomed us to this magnificent event that I really salute Opino and the MIT Center for having put together, even on the back end with such incredible professionalism, is that, in fact, futures are co-created, the future of digital governance is co-created, and that technology can be used to unleash human potential, not break it down or replace it. And this is our main message. In the next 13 minutes that we'll spend together, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our current reflections on AI, our approach to AI and democracy, our approach to AI and human rights and digital governance at large, and then very briefly follow up on what Nicolas talked about as it concerns this very exciting project, which is the AI Civic Forum, which we hope all of you will be a part of. As I mentioned, I will show a couple of short videos, and this underlines for us our two global priorities, which is that we need to have more women voices in AI, and we need to have more voices from the global south in AI, that the conversation cannot be between Europe and North America, or European countries and other European countries, that it needs to be a global discussion, including with the people who do not agree with us, and the countries who do not agree with us, so that we can build consensus as it concerns an ethical framework in this regard. I'd like very briefly just to give a clin d'oeil to Dennis, who mentioned Turing, who is largely recognized as one of the fathers of artificial intelligence, and he said something that I love, which is sometimes it is the people who no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. And so moving forward this agenda of co-designing the future of AI governance, we need all these voices on board, notably the ones that are excluded, including oftentimes, in fact, youth, so like yourselves. No more white men in a closed door debating the future of digital governance. We need to blow those doors open. We need to have open conversations. And UNESCO, as a specialized agency working on this issue, is dedicated to blowing those doors open. So very briefly, just to talk about the link that we see between AI and democracy, for us, this is a very natural link because data is the lifeblood of democracy now. It also underlines what, for us, we believe democracy fundamentally means, which means not only that ordinary citizens understand the issues at hand, but that deliberation and debate are the lifeblood and the soul of democracy, and particularly as it concerns democratic digital transformation. We need democratic debate on what the future of AI looks like. And we need to co-create, as what Henry mentioned earlier today, new ethical landscapes that correspond to the work that we are committed to doing in a multi-stakeholder way. Just to contextualize, why UNESCO is working on this issue, many people are not aware that for the past 25 years, through two commissions, our World Commission on Scientific Knowledge and our Bioethics Committee, we have worked on standard setting in this field. We have worked to develop the Universal Declaration of the Human Genome and Human Rights, the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, and the Declaration of Ethical Principles in relation to climate change, among others. So for us, the ethics of science and technology are really at the heart of what we are doing and what we plan to prioritize going forward. COMEST, the World Commission on the Ethics of Science and Technology, recently published a preliminary study on the ethical implications of AI. And here they underline 6 main areas, which I'd like to share with you. One is the standardization of cultural production, how AI changes the way artists make work, how they're recognized as artists, how they produce, international cooperation, gender bias, and social exclusion. This is a huge issue. We published recently a book called I'd Blush If I Could. After we tested Alexa, where actually, if you ask Alexa, or if you say to UNESCO, Alexa, you're a slut, Alexa responds, thank you very much for your opinion. So this reinforcement of certain gender stereotypes that are completely destructive and also, unfortunately, normal, because there are people feeding data sets to these machines and people are bias. So what AI is doing is actually magnifying the existing social bias, and we have an opportunity through this technology to not only rectify the bias in the technology, but also become aware of the bias in ourselves. Comest also underlined the transformation of the relationship between knowledge and decision-making, the way in which we access media content and the dangers of automated journalism, the way in which it changes how we learn and how we think about the future of work, and how we use it in democratic processes. This underlines for us a roadmap going forward as it concerns certain priority areas that UNESCO would like to work on. We are committed to having a pluridisciplinary and multicultural debate about what kind of future we want for humanity in light of this technology, with an emphasis in understanding that just because it is technologically feasible does not mean we should do it. And this for us is key. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. But what are the parameters that exist that guide us in deciding collectively at the international level what do we do and what we don't? And so UNESCO here is working specifically on this issue, and I'd like to just pass the floor to another woman who will speak a little bit about this specifically.
Les premiers mots qui me viennent à l'esprit, c'est bien sûr innovation, mais ensuite c'est biais et c'est données personnelles, vie privée. Les principaux risques liés à l'utilisation de l'intelligence artificielle et notamment au regard des droits humains, c'est notamment les risques liés à la vie privée, à travers notamment la surveillance, l'utilisation abusive des données personnelles des citoyens, des utilisateurs, mais aussi les risques liés à la liberté d'expression. Je pense à certains exemples qui existent aujourd'hui de certaines sociétés dans lesquelles l'espace public est soumis à une surveillance extrême grâce à l'utilisation de l'intelligence artificielle. Le cadre de la Déclaration universelle des droits de l'homme doit être le cadre de référence pour tout ce qui est lié au développement de l'intelligence artificielle, mais plus globalement de tout ce qui est lié à Internet. On imagine très mal que ces outils-là puissent être coupés de la mission première de l'UNESCO, qui est de faire en sorte que tout le monde ait accès au savoir. L'organisation a été à l'origine de nombreux efforts qui ont permis aujourd'hui de faire prendre conscience à beaucoup d'acteurs que oui, l'Internet, c'est un outil formidable de transmission de la connaissance qui permet de mettre tout le monde à peu près sur le même pied d'égalité. Eh bien, l'intelligence artificielle est censée renforcer cela, mais l'intelligence artificielle ne le fera pas si on met de côté totalement les questions liées à la citoyenneté, les questions liées aux droits, les questions liées à la démocratie.
And here, reflecting on what Giulio Buono said, I'd like to underline that our approach at UNESCO to digital governance, and specifically our work in developing a framework for the ethical principles of AI, is guided by human rights, but also guided by what we have called our Internet Universality Framework, which was adopted by 195 countries at our General Conference in 2015, which means that 195 countries agreed this is what we should use as a basis going forward for the development of digital governance. And it's based on 4 principles, which we call the Rome Principles, that anything related to emerging technology and digital governance should be rights-based, should be open, should be accessible, and should be multi-stakeholder. And here I'd just like to salute what Alex said this morning, which I thought was absolutely brilliant in her language, of this notion of data stewardship. That this data stewardship needs to be a stewardship that's open and that leads to the respect of fundamental rights, including access to information and freedom of expression. And I'd like to also underline the incredible work that Nicolas Miaillet is doing on global data commons, which is directly related to our work on AI, which is if data is the lifeblood of democracy, then we need to be able to access it. And so how can we work together across sectors to make sure that we can access this data?
What comes to mind when I think of artificial intelligence is a big machine processing all sorts of data all at once. And so this involves smaller data made into big data that's processed in a way that could either be used to assist in decision making or to make the decisions themselves. I think one of the biggest challenges associated with artificial intelligence is especially when it is used in cases that are vulnerable categories, such as when we use artificial intelligence in the criminal justice system. This can be used to make a decision that is untransparent and that has really great ramifications on individuals' personal liberty. My key message to governments or to policymakers working on AI is that we should not be handing over these decision-making processes to vendors or to engineers that work at vendors. They're not elected officials. And we need to make sure that humans, again, are kept in the loop. Even if we're using a machine to help policymakers make decisions, it needs to be an assistance. It can't be definitive. It can't make the decision itself. And we need to make sure that there is oversight, there is accountability, and that there's a lot of regular input into this process of machine learning. I think the UNESCO, as well as other international actors or international bodies, need to work together to establish standards to have member states of the United Nations and the private sector and civil society work together to implement these standards that respect human rights and that are reflected in domestic legislation as well. I think connecting those dots together are really important, and a body like the UNESCO would be able to do that.
So this was filmed last year in November as part of a series on voices in AI on the margins of the Internet Governance Forum. And since then, a lot of exciting work has been done in the field of standard setting. The European Commission adopted their principles. The OECD adopted theirs that were adopted even further by the G20 and other countries. The IEEE is doing incredible work as it concerns standard setting and principles. The Council of Europe as well. And what we at UNESCO are hoping to do, and it will be adopted in just a couple weeks at our general conference in Paris, is to embark on a journey, a multi-stakeholder journey, to adopt the first international global standards on ethical principles in AI. And this will build on the absolutely excellent work that has already been done by a lot of these regional and international bodies, working with them to render them into a non-binding legal framework that will guide governments, but also the private sector and engineers and the technical community and academia as it concerns ethical frameworks going forward for the development of an AI that contributes to sustainable development more concretely. We have experience in this standard-setting process, and I'd just briefly like to touch on one directly relevant to AI and collective intelligence, beyond and also as a precursor to our civic forum, is in partnership. I lived for a very long time in East and West Africa representing UNESCO, and while we were there, we developed a project called I for Policy in partnership with particularly young women and men in Africa, looking at how to create and systematize interfaces between the government and young people to renovate their digital transformation and digital economy policies. And what we saw on the ground is that there is no place where the Minister of ICT and a young student in Rwanda sit down and have a beer and say, hey, what's up? Let's talk about this digital economy policy. Actually, your procurement policy doesn't work for me because it says we have to exist since 3 years and have all these bank statements, and I'm a startup, and we're 2, and we don't have any funding. There's no opportunity for that kind of dialogue. And so what we're looking at is how to systematize these kinds of interfaces using collective intelligence to help public policymakers make informed decisions about the policies that directly impact their citizens and particularly their young people in the digital sphere. And this led very concretely to a new Startup Act in Senegal, which is now a law adopted by the President of Senegal. It led to the review of procurement policies as it concerns the digital economy in Rwanda, which has now been changed into a law. And what we are hoping to do and what we are confident we will do with our partners from the Future Society, but also the AI Initiative, the Observatory on the Societal Impacts of AI, and the team of the Montreal Declaration on Responsible AI, is to bring together at a global level, both through face-to-face meetings but also online, different communities to talk and different stakeholder groups to talk with each other and to talk specifically about what do they see as the pressing issues of ethical aspects of AI. And here I'd like to underline something absolutely crucial, is that we also want to make sure that we are involving stakeholder groups that have no idea what AI is. And here education is absolutely crucial, and tools like massive open online courses that raise awareness on what AI is central also to the work that we'll be doing in the Civic Forum. So this binôme of capacity building of how do you talk about AI? How do you understand it? What is it? How does it impact your life? And then the other side saying, well, now that you understand that, how can we work together so that you can input into these ethical principles that in reality will change the world of tomorrow is the main project of this Global Civic Forum. And here I'd like to end in linking it back to our guiding principles, which are the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda, to underline that part of these targets also includes making sure that we have an inclusive approach to the development of digital governance. And you cannot meet the Sustainable Development Goals if you're leaving women, the Global South, and youth, among others, indigenous communities, on the side. And so we hope to have this multi-stakeholder debate. There will be frictions, people will disagree. And in that disagreement, which is part of the collective intelligence process, it will be uncertain, but it will also be productive and lead to this framework that we hope all of you will participate in. So I will leave you on that with an invitation that you lend your voices to this AI Civic Forum that will be occurring in the beginning of next year, and we hope that this will have a domino effect and that your voices will be heard and input into this ethical framework, which will be adopted in 2 years at UNESCO by our 100+ member states as a guiding framework for work between the public sector, academia, and the private sector going forward. So thank you very much for your time.